Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. We'll begin with chapter 8, verse 3. We were discussing this yesterday, the position of Rashi after Hashem conveys to Moshe instructions in terms of the menorah. It says that Aaron did so. Like, of course, Aaron did so. So why wouldn't Aaron have done so? So Rashi says the pshat is he didn't deviate in any way from God's instructions. The Ramban has a different pshat, just an interesting Ramban. Ramban on Pasuk Gimel. V'tam vayaskena Aaron lomar shehu hoya madliko son kol yamav. That for the rest of Aaron's life, he would always be the one to light the menorah. Even though it's not a Kohen Gadol mitzvah, it's a Kohen mitzvah. It could be done by any of Aaron or his sons. That Aaron understood that this mitzvah had very lofty ideas and illusions, and therefore he wanted to do it himself. So just an interesting pshat in what it means that Aaron did it. It means Aaron always did it. Interesting. Okay. Jumping ahead to verse 24. Okay. So it says in the pasuk, Hashem says to Moshe, Zos Hasher L'Alvim, this is the instruction for the Levim. Miben Chamesh V'Ashrim Shana V'Mala, from the age of 25 and up, Yavo L'Tzvo Tzavoah B'Avodas Oel Moed. They will come to do work in the service of the Oel Moed. And 25, and once Levi hits 50, he shouldn't serve anymore. Now, this is a little bit confusing because if you remember, we had earlier in this book talking about the counting of the Levium, and the idea of counting the Levium, the second time the Levium were counted was to get the numbers of people ready for service, and that started with age 30. And now it says in the pasuk that the Levium should start serving from age 25. So which one is it? So if you look at the second Rashi on this pasuk, miben chamesh v'esrim u'makom acher omer miben shloshim shana. But elsewhere it says they begin serving from 30, and this pasuk says 25. How does that work? Miben esrim v'chamesh ba lilmod hilchos avoda v'lomed chamesh shanim uven shloshim Oved, a very interesting idea that they should start coming to learn the halachos of what their tasks are, and presumably observing and the like for 5 years. They should come at age 25, and a lot of a lot of parents think it should be that way for learning permit and driver's license. It should give them 5. Okay, but they should come at age 25 and learn and understand, and then at age 30, that's when they actually start working. An interesting quote from the Gemara now. The Talmud. So the Gemara learns an interesting thing from there, that if a person is sitting and learning for 5 years and he's really not seeing success, then if after 5 years, that's the sign that if you haven't gotten it after 5 years, it's not going to happen. Yeah. So the Ramban now cites Rashi. If you look at the Ramban on Pasuk Chav Daled, beginning with the Imkain, which is about 5 or 6 lines into the Ramban. He's just got finished citing Rashi. V'imkein yaperush yavo l'tzvot tzava she yavo lihikoel b'nikolim b'avodas oel moed. It's interesting. So if that's the pshat that at 25 they begin to learn, what does it mean, yavo l'tzvot tzava? They will come to be part of the legion. In what sense will they come to be part of the legion? So he says it must be that they're supposed to gather with the people who are serving in the tent of meeting, but not actually do the service, but kind of be with them. Shiyamori moem, that he should stand with them. V'yira tamid avodasam b'yom v'layla, and they'll see their tasks day and night. They should yilmad hilchas avoda b'talmud v'maseh. They'll learn it, but they won't only get shiurim on the topic; they'll see it in action. Ulakach lo amar kan la avoda avoda. Kvosh amar lamala lo amar litzvot tzava b'avodas oel moed. It's a really interesting point the Ramban makes. When we say the age of 25, the Levi will come to. So earlier, the language in the Torah was lavod avodah, to do the service, but it didn't say that here. It just said to be counted among the legion. because the point, says the Ramban, is that they just stand with the Levium doing the work and watch what they do, but they're not actually doing it. Now the Ramban goes further. He says, I'm not sure everyone agrees to this pshat. It's true. Rashi's quoting from a medrash, but it's this just one opinion in the medrash that says this pshat that Rashi said. The other thing, says the Ramban, is, first of all, it doesn't seem everyone agrees in it. Second of all, the Ramban says it's far from clear that this is a real halacha being learned from the Torah, as much as that the common practice was that people would learn for 5 years. So this is sort of like, sometimes you have an asmachta, something that seems to be alluded to in the Torah. Maybe it's intended, maybe it's not, but we can kind of use this as a memory device or as like a connection to something. The Ramban says that's what it sounds like, Tim. The Ramban doesn't think the Torah is really teaching us halacha about how many years the Levium are to learn. Hamnimnin biad Moshe ve'Aaron hayu mi ben shloshim shana v'mala v'heim asher hifkedu sam ish al avoda sovi al masao avol kan siva kikol asher yeda ba'atzmo shabo l'chlal esrim v'chamesh shana yia kosher lavoda v'yavo b'chol avas nafsho lavoda imoyem u'l'sayeh imoyem ba'avoda avol lo yia pakid nagid al avoda yedua. The Ramban says, if you don't say this pshat, which the Ramban is far from sure that it is the pshat, the straightforward meaning would be that the Torah, when it spoke about age 30 to 50 before, didn't say that's the age that you can serve. All the Torah was saying there was, this is the age that the Levium will be counted. So the age the Levium will be counted is age 30. The reason they're being counted is because that's the age where it's clear that people can serve. But technically speaking, says the Ramban, what the Torah is conveying to us here is when someone is 25 years old, if they feel confident, they can come forward and do it. So at age 30, it's assumed that all the Levium are going to do it. And that's why, God doesn't tell Moshe, take a poll of which Levium are up to it and which Levium are not up to it and figure out the numbers. That's way too complicated. So God says to Moshe, you know what, age 30 to 50, that's your group. You can be confident that those are the numbers available for the Levium. But the bottom line is that what we're saying here is the age of eligibility, if someone feels they're ready to do it, perhaps at an age younger than others, is 25 and up. Vatam bozek kol adam no sein libo bas rosav ki ishtanu bohem atzvoim v'yeda ba'agio le'esrim o l'shloshim ki yedu bo shcheno v'krova v'av v'imo yolda v'yodiyuhu aval ba'agio le'esrim v'chamesh lo yagishu bo kol kach. It's a very interesting observation. Ramban says people have a way of feeling differently about themselves, maybe about their abilities, when they hit landmark ages, the tens. Other people look at the person differently, whatever it is. But age 25, it doesn't feel like it's such a different moment for a person. People know when someone is 30 years old, so people will look at them differently, and it'll be clear what age they are. Okay, that's the Ramban's pshat. For Rabbi Avram Omer b'derech hapshat, ki mi ben shloshim hu lavodas masa, u ben chamesh vesrim lavodas ha'oel. The Eben Ezra has a different pshat. The Eben Ezra says the real context, we were counting between 30 and 50, was people carrying things. So that when you're age 30, that's when we say you're old enough to carry the items in transit. But in terms of the service of Levium in the tent of meeting, which is what we're talking about here, that was 25 and up. The Ramban says, I don't think that's right. So the Ramban says, I don't think that's the pshat. The Ramban says it also talks about the service of the Omoid. So this is just an interesting thing. We've had 3 different ideas, somewhat of a technical point, but 3 different ideas as to why there's the discrepancy between the ages of the Levium. Rashi says that no Levi is allowed to serve before 30, but they should begin to learn from 25 and on. The Ramban says the age that they're counted for service is 30. It seems to be the easiest time to count. People will know who's 30, who's not 30. But if they feel up to it, they can start serving from the age of 25. And the Abbot Ezra says, no, certain services were done from 30 and certain services were done from 25. Okay, let's jump ahead now to chapter 9, verse 1. Vaydaber Hashem Moshe b'Bar Sinai b'Shana Hashenis l'Tzeisam b'Eretz Tzrayim b'Chodesh Harishon Lemor. So Hashem says to Moshe in Nisan of the second year. Okay, the Torah gives very clear labeling here that the following discussion, this is going to have to do with the idea of the Korban Pesach in Egypt, in the desert, excuse me. And it's very clear that this discussion was happening in Nisan, the year after the Jews left Egypt. And this leads to an interesting discussion. If you jump to the Ramban and Pasuk Aleph, V'ashanoah shenis l'tzeisam b'Eretz Tzrayim b'chodesh harishon, mikan amru rabboseinu zal, ein mukdam u'me'uchar b'Torah. The rabbis teach that you learn from here that you can't assume that things are necessarily in chronological order in the Torah. There were things already discussed earlier in Chumash that happened after this point in time. And it's clear. It's not left to interpretation as to when this is happening. The Torah tells us exactly when. So this is the classic source that you're just compelled to say. The Torah is not written in chronological order. So now, why in the world would this be out of order? In other words, presumably in Mukta Mocha B'Torah doesn't mean that God just wants to make a point, so he randomly, flips everything around. Presumably the point is that God doesn't feel bound to write things in chronological order. So why would this not be in chronological order? The reason this was delayed, when this fourth book, the book of Bamidbar, comes to talk about the mitzvahs the Jewish people were given in the desert, Ratza lahashlim inyan moed vitikuno koyimei Midbar. First, Hashem wanted to talk about the tent of meeting and how it was appropriately cared to and dealt with throughout their time in the desert. V'hizkir tchila hatzgalim. So first we had at the beginning of Sefer Bamidbar the flags, umakom ha'oel umamad mishorsav, and the position of the tent, v'tikun hamishmaros l'masel l'chol avodas ha'moed, and the roles in terms of the movement of things. V'hizkir korbanos hanasiyim. We talked about the offerings of the heads of tribes. Sheviu agalos sheyisu osobo and kol eis yosam b'midbar. V'ishlam korbanosam b'chanukas hamizbeach shu me'echad b'nisan o kodem lachem. So these offerings that are brought for the Mizbeach begin around Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And that's when this is happening. So even though the discussion of the Korban Pesach happened at least before some of the offerings being brought, the Torah wanted to get through all of the things about the Mishkan. The Acharei Kain, after we've gotten through the subject of understanding the dedication of the Mishkan and everything associated with the dedication of the Mishkan, then we go back to this important point about not forgetting about the Korban Pesach. So that's how the Ramban is explaining what the sequence is over here. So we discussed the Ramban regarding why it has to say Aaron did what he was instructed. We discussed various Rishonim regarding the question of 25 verses 30. And now we began to discuss this question, that not everything is written chronologically.